1. Ascribed status. A social position assigned at birth or involuntarily assumed later in life, e.g., race, gender. 2. Bourgeoisie. The capitalist class who own the means of production in Marxist theory. 3. Discrimination. Unfair treatment of individuals or groups based on their membership in a particular category. 4. Dominant group. The group in society with the most power, privilege, and social status. 5. Minority group. A group of people who are singled out for unequal treatment based on physical or cultural characteristics. 6. Gender norms. Societal expectations about how individuals should behave based on their gender. 7. Genocide. The deliberate and systematic extermination of a racial, ethnic, or cultural group. 8. Institutional discrimination. Discrimination embedded in the policies, practices, and norms of social institutions. 9. Intersectionality. A framework for understanding how various forms of inequality, e.g., race, gender, class, intersect and compound. 10. Means of production. The resources and tools used to produce goods and services, central to Marxist theory. 11. Patriarchy. A social system in which men hold primary power and predominate in roles of political leadership and social privilege. 12. Prejudice. A preconceived opinion or attitude about a group, often based on stereotypes. 13. Prestige. The level of respect or admiration associated with a social position. 14. Proletariat. The working class who sell their labor for wages in Marxist theory. 15. Sexism. Discrimination or prejudice based on a person's sex or gender. 16. Social class. A division of society based on economic and social status. 17. Social construction. The idea that social phenomena, e.g., race, gender, are created and maintained by society rather than being natural. 18. Social mobility. The ability of individuals or groups to move within the social hierarchy. 19. Stereotypes. Oversimplified and generalized beliefs about a group of people. 20. Stratification. The hierarchical arrangement of individuals in society based on wealth, power, and status. 21. Subsistence technology. The tools and methods used to meet basic survival needs in a society. 22. Reasons for the increasing diversity in the United States. Factors include immigration, globalization, and changing birth rates. 23. Karl Marx's ideas of stratification. Marx argued that society is divided into two classes, the bourgeoisie, owners, and the proletariat, workers, with conflict between them driving social change. 24. Max Weber's ideas of stratification. Weber expanded on Marx by adding status and power as additional dimensions of social stratification, beyond just economic class. 25. Patricia Hill Collins. A sociologist known for her work on intersectionality and Black feminist thought. 26. Webb Du Bois. A sociologist and civil rights activist who studied race and racism, emphasizing the concept of double consciousness. 27. Acculturation. The process of adopting the cultural traits or social patterns of another group. 28. Americanization. The process of assimilating into American culture, often used in reference to immigrants. 29. Anglo-conformity. The expectation that immigrants should adopt Anglo-American cultural norms. 30. Anti-Semitism. Prejudice, discrimination, or hostility against Jewish people. 31. Assimilation. The process by which a minority group adopts the customs and attitudes of the dominant culture. 32. Cultural pluralism. A condition in which minority groups maintain their cultural traditions while coexisting with the dominant culture. 33. Enclave minority group. A minority group that establishes its own community and economy within a larger society. 34. Ethclass. A concept combining ethnicity and social class to analyze social stratification. 35. Genocide. The deliberate and systematic extermination of a racial, ethnic, or cultural group. 36. Industrial Revolution. A period of major industrialization that transformed economies and societies, beginning in the late 18th century. 37. Human capital theory. The idea that individuals invest in education and skills to increase their economic value. 38. Integration. The process of bringing people of different racial or ethnic groups into equal association. 39. Intermarriage. Marriage between individuals from different racial, ethnic, or religious groups. 40. Labor-intensive production. Production that relies heavily on human labor rather than machinery. 41. Melting pot. A metaphor for a society where different groups blend together to create a unified culture. 42. Middleman minority group. A minority group that occupies an intermediate position in the social hierarchy, often acting as intermediaries between dominant and subordinate groups. 43. Multiculturalism. A perspective that recognizes and values the diversity of cultures within a society. 44. New immigration. Refers to the wave of immigration to the U.S. from Southern and Eastern Europe in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. 45. Old immigration. Refers to the wave of immigration to the U.S. from Western and Northern Europe in the mid-19th century. 46. Pluralism. A condition in which multiple groups coexist and maintain their distinct cultural identities. 47. Primary sector. The part of the economy involved in extracting natural resources, e.g., agriculture, mining. 48. Race relations cycle. A theory by Robert Park that describes the stages of interaction between racial groups: contact, competition, accommodation, and assimilation. 49. Robert Park's theory of assimilation. Park argued that assimilation is a natural process that occurs over time as groups interact. 50. Revolution. A fundamental and often sudden change in the political, social, or economic structure of society. 51. Secondary sector. The part of the economy involved in processing raw materials into finished goods, e.g., manufacturing. 52. Segmented assimilation. The idea that different immigrant groups assimilate into different segments of society, often based on class and race. 53. Separatism. The advocacy or practice of separating a certain group of people from a larger body, often based on ethnicity or religion. 54. Social structure. The organized pattern of social relationships and institutions that make up society. 55. Structural mobility. Mobility that occurs due to changes in the structure of society, such as industrialization. 56. Structural pluralism. A condition in which different groups coexist but maintain separate institutions and social structures. 57. Milton Gordon's theory of assimilation. Gordon identified 7 stages of assimilation, including cultural, structural, and marital assimilation. 58. The differences in assimilation processes for Western European immigrants and Southern and Eastern European immigrants. Western European immigrants were more readily accepted, while Southern and Eastern Europeans faced more discrimination and slower assimilation. 59. Degree of similarity. The extent to which a minority group is culturally or physically similar to the dominant group, affecting assimilation. 60. Authoritarian personality. A personality type characterized by a tendency to obey authority and enforce strict social hierarchies. 61. Equal status contact hypothesis. The idea that prejudice can be reduced when groups interact as equals. 62. Hate crime. A crime motivated by prejudice based on race, religion, gender, or other characteristics. 63. Modern racism. A more subtle form of racism that emphasizes cultural differences rather than biological superiority. 64. Scapegoat hypothesis. The idea that prejudice arises from the need to blame others for one's own problems. 65. Social distance. The degree of closeness or acceptance that people feel toward other social groups. 66. Socialization. The process by which individuals learn the norms, values, and behaviors of their society. 67. Split labor market theory. The idea that the labor market is divided into higher-paid and lower-paid segments, often along racial or ethnic lines. 68. Vicious cycle. A self-perpetuating cycle of poverty and discrimination that is difficult to break. 69. Affective versus cognitive dimensions of prejudice. Affective prejudice refers to emotional responses, while cognitive prejudice involves beliefs and stereotypes. 70. Robbers Cave Experiment. A study by Muzafer Sharif that demonstrated how competition between groups can lead to conflict and prejudice. 71. Blue Eye Brown Eye Experiment. An exercise by Jane Elliott to teach about discrimination by dividing people based on eye color. 72. Explanations for the decline in traditional racism. Factors include civil rights movements, changes in laws, and increased education. 73. Traditional racism. Overt and explicit racism based on beliefs of racial superiority. 74. Abolitionism. The movement to end slavery, particularly in the United States. 75. Blauner Hypothesis. The idea that colonized minority groups experience more persistent discrimination than immigrant groups. 76. Caste system. A rigid social hierarchy where status is determined by birth and remains fixed for life. 77. Chattel. A form of slavery where individuals are treated as personal property. 78. Colonized minority groups. Groups that were incorporated into a society through conquest or colonization. 79. Differential in power. The unequal. 79. Differential in power. The unequal distribution of power between groups, often leading to conflict. 80. Competition. A struggle between groups for resources, status, or power. 81. Ethnocentrism. The belief in the inherent superiority of one's own ethnic group or culture. 82. Immigrant minority groups. Groups that voluntarily migrate to a new society and often face challenges in assimilation. 83. Indentured servants. Individuals who worked for a set period of time in exchange for passage to a new country. 84. Noel Hypothesis. The idea that ethnic stratification results from competition, ethnocentrism, and differential power. 85. Paternalism. A system where a dominant group controls and provides for a subordinate group, often in a condescending manner. 86. Plantation system. An agricultural system based on large-scale estates and the use of slave labor. 87. Affirmative action. Policies designed to increase opportunities for historically disadvantaged groups. 88. Deindustrialization. The decline of industrial activity in a region or economy. 89. De jure segregation. Segregation that is enforced by law. 90. Primary occupations. Jobs involved in extracting natural resources, e.g., farming, mining. 91. Secondary occupations. Jobs involved in manufacturing and processing raw materials. 92. Tertiary occupations. Jobs involved in services rather than goods, e.g., healthcare, education. 93. Fluid competitive systems. Social systems where competition between groups is less rigid and more open. 94. Jim Crow system. Laws and practices that enforced racial segregation in the U.S. South after Reconstruction. 95. Modern institutional discrimination. Discrimination that is embedded in the policies and practices of institutions, often unintentional. 96. Past and present institutional discrimination. Discrimination that results from historical practices that continue to affect present-day outcomes. 97. Primary labor market. Jobs that offer high wages, benefits, and job security. 98. Reconstruction. The period after the U.S. Civil War when the South was rebuilt and African Americans gained civil rights. 99. Rigid competitive group system. A social system where competition between groups is highly structured and inflexible. 100. Secondary labor market. Jobs that offer low wages, few benefits, and little job security. 101. Sharecropping. A system where tenants farm land in exchange for a share of the crop, often leading to cycles of debt.